Shit, today you're gonna see. Let me tell you something out. We got something good. We got the entire story of Family Guy, bruh, by Jar Tunes. We read to them before. So if you haven't, go check him out. So again, this has got 25K views. He has 430K subscribers. So you can't tell me no one's not watching this shit. So nonetheless, let's get on to it. Let's watch it. Let's react. The entire story of Family Guy.
89. The millennium is on the horizon and the world is needing a certain
Hold on, let me check something. The audio. Okay, output. You guys should be able to hear it. Alright.
guy to kickstart the 2000s. A certain, I don't know, Family Guy? Well, aren't we just so lucky? Riding on the success of shows like The Simpsons, the animated space had a Family Guy-sized hole in it, with everyone crying out for more mature show topics to come on the airwaves. And boy, did it ever. Family Guy debuted and was a roaring success, scooping up 9 primetime Emmys across.
And that too, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the show is still running like 20 years later. 25 years later, 26 years later, damn near 30 years later. I think it's still going too. I'm a big Family Guy fan, man. I've been watching Family Guy since I was a kid. So, because I was born around that time that it started and shit. So I haven't watched like every single episode, but I've watched it like some, a lot, not every single one, but a lot.
So far, generating over $1 billion in revenue. So today, we're going to be going on a tour through the back catalog of Family Guy, bringing you the fan favorite and the most important episodes in the show's history. There are over 420 episodes up for grabs, so obviously, we're not going to be covering every single one. Just get my apologies in case I skim over your favorite episode, okay? Before we get into the swing of things, let me drop some context for those watching who aren't really familiar with the show. Family Guy centers around the Griffin family, who live their lives at 31 Spooner Street in Quahog, Rhode Island. You've got Peter, a pretty brain-dead but well-meaning father who just wants a quiet life. Lois, a fiery but somehow super patient wife who is stuck between loving who she loves and wanting something better. Chris, a typical teenage boy who takes after his father in the, brain department. Meg, the entire family's punching bag, or basically any normal middle child. Stewie, the evil, big-brained baby with a British accent, and Brian, Peter and Stewie's
too, this
best
is another
friend.
thing, like Family Guy, damn, I don't know, you guys should be able to see my cursor, let me know if you guys can't, but Family Guy, it's a certified classic. It's up there with The Simpsons, you know what I'm saying? It's certified classic. This is where I see Rick and Morty going. I know I'm kind of yapping here, but this is where I see, like, Rick and Morty, like, ending up as a TV type, because, like, it's just such great cinema, just such great shit. But this is, like, yeah, like, when a show starts, their ideal goal is to, like, have the longevity like Family Guy or The Simpsons. That's like the ideal goal, you know what I'm saying? And Rick and Morty still needs to like make that transcendence to like goatness to classicness. But yeah, I'm just kind of yapping there, but yeah.
Who also happens to be the family dog. There's a whole assortment of other important characters that we will meet along the way. We've not even talked about Quagmire or Joe yet, but don't worry, all in good time. For now, I think that's all the things that need to be covered. So, let's dive on in. The very first episode of the series, Death Has a Shadow, starts like any other day on Spooner Street. Lois is making dinner, Meg and Chris are studying, and Stewie is putting the final touches on his mind control device.
The mind control device is nearing completion.
Stewie, I said no toys at the table.
For, another thing too, which is kind of bad, is like, and I never understood it because I guess it's a show. Stewie was always doing some crazy shit in the beginning of Family Guy, and then they like, I don't know, like they just besides Brian, no one really like ever really noticed to me. Like besides Brian, no one ever noticed, Which is kind of weird. Like, what?
Well, Peter has been getting himself ready to head to a stag party. A stag party he hasn't asked Lois if he can go to yet. I'd pay close attention to that scene if I were you. I've got a feeling it's going to crop up again later. Peter promises that he won't drink, but we know Peter. And he doesn't listen to Lois's advice. Instead, he goes to play that famous party game, Drink the Beer.
Wants to play Drink the Beer. Right here.
You win.
You win.
So after the heavy session, he goes to work
the next day. He's like, you win.
and falls
He's like,
asleep
what?
on the
Another
job,
beer?
where
I
he's
remember
got to
that
check
episode.
toys for items that could harm children.
Yo!
Hey, come on. I used to play with a can of gas all the time as a kid.
Dude's just
There's nothing
hungover,
wrong with
sleeping.
that. Mr. Weed and the Toy Factory have to pull the plug on Peter for his misconduct. But instead of telling Lois about it, he tried to act quick and get another job.
Caca for Cocoa Puffs. No, damn it, take 26.
Hey!
He's not.
If you haven't, go watch my video, the Cocoa Puffs Conspiracy. You know what I'm saying? That just reminded me of it.
Not having much luck. After a conversation with Brian about his family's welfare, Peter has that word stuck in his mind. so much so that he soon applies for government assistance at a welfare office. But a processing error creates a weekly check for $150,000.
Guys, our money problems are over. We're officially on welfare.
Telling Lois he received a big raise, Peter spends his money willy-nilly on things like renting the Statue of David, treating Meg to cosmetic surgery, and even goes so far as to surround his house with a moat. The mail lady bursts Peter's secret bubble when she hands Lois the welfare check. She storms at him and convinces him to give the money back. I'm not sure she had this in mind.
Damn.
Amazing. You can barely drive a car.
He rented a Blair. That's right.
They end up in prison for their little stunt, and Lois has to go to court to see a judge sentence Peter to 24 months in prison. Lois tries to explain he's not that bad, and she loves him, insisting that no matter what, she will always stand by her husband. The judge agrees and sends her to jail with him. Stewie, on the other hand, realizes he can't be without his parents for 2 years, so he whips out his mind control device, manipulates the judge, and frees his parents. Peter sees this as a lesson well learned.
That would happen next episode. I always wondered. I never got that. I was like, so okay, that makes sense, because I was like, why did the judge magically change his mind like that? I forgot. Like, I was like wondering. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, I never noticed that.
Promising to never do it again. Wow. If only we bought that. The second episode that we'll be covering is Brian, Portrait of a Dog. And boy, Quahog is stuck in one brutal heat wave. And guess who doesn't have AC? The Griffins. With no real way to cool down, Peter hatches a plan to enter Brian into a local dog show to win the $500 prize to buy a new AC unit. Sounds great, but Brian isn't thrilled about the idea. But the family manages to convince him to give it a shot, though even if he wasn't so quick to act on behalf of his family's welfare this time around. At the competition, Brian performs a few tricks, and things seem to be going great. But Peter tries and fails to impress the judges by placing a dog biscuit on Brian's nose and asking him to beg. He doesn't take it well, and storms out of the competition. On the way home, after another argument, Brian jumps out of the family car wanting to get away from Peter, but he's soon stopped and cautioned by the police for being out without a leash.
Hey, don't suppose you could let us off with
Damn!
Sorry, sir, but leash laws are for his own good.
Lois tries to help him make up, but when Brian won't back down, Peter calls him a bad dog and decides to replace him with a cat. Not just any cat, an angry cat.
Come on down. Nice and easy. That's a good kitty.
Hell no.
Brian struggles to get by on his own. He's treated poorly by the people in town and has nowhere to stay. He can't even catch a break at the bus station.
Sorry, Pooch, you gotta sleep outside. No dogs allowed in the bus station.
Back at home, Peter starts realizing how much he misses Brian, and the rest of the family aren't happy with the new pet either. So he swallows his pride and sets out to find his best friend. It's too late, though, as Brian has already hit rock bottom.
Brian has a damn beard.
Get away from me, you crazy animal!
Desperate to save him from being put down, Peter rushes to court and begs the judges to reconsider. At first, no one takes him seriously, but he makes a heartfelt speech about how much Brian means to him and the family. But as the old saying goes, money talks. To seal the deal, Peter hands the judge $20 each, and Brian is freed and allowed to return to his cat-free home, with a family who does love him. Hey, who knew Family Guy had a soft side? Season 2's Da Boom is the next episode we'll be covering, and you kinda do forget how old Family Guy is, because this episode is set in 1999. New Year's Eve, 1999 to be exact.
And that was low-key, like, 1999 was before I was even born, bro. Like, that's what I'm saying. This show's been going on before I was born. Such a fucking classic, man. Such a classic.
Getting ready to celebrate the new millennium, Peter's gathering some party supplies when he's suddenly reminded of an old enemy.
Oh, the chicken.
Peter has other things on his mind than chickens and celebrating, though, as the mysterious man in costume warns him about the dangers of Y2K. No, not Y2J, Y2K. Although, no one wants to eat a code breaker.
The rabbit, yo.
There won't be any other time. The world is going to end at midnight tonight.
You see, Peter's a very superstitious man, so he forces the whole family to put their celebrations on hold and head into a bomb shelter, convinced the world is about to end. Don't ask me how, but he's right.
Yeah, that's stupid.
The few survivors are injured or horribly mutated, but thanks to...
And to be honest, I don't even know what the whole Y2K thing was supposed to be, but I think people actually thought... I don't know what it was. If I'm not mistaken, I might be yapping here. I think it was that it had something to do with like technology or computers or something like that. That they weren't like set or made to go into the next millennium, so they thought like everything was just gonna shut down or something like that. It was something like weird and like it just sounded like brain rot conspiracy. I'm like, what? So I don't know exactly what it was. We gotta look that up later. But like, yeah, I forgot what it was. But yeah, the fact that they made an episode about it is just. It's stupid, dude. And then, like, at the time, like, imagine if you're a kid watching this, you're thinking, like, Y2K is real and it's gonna happen, bro. Like, I don't know. It just inciting fear and shit. And Y2K was just stupid in general to me. Like, it was a stupid-ass conspiracy, in my opinion. But, whatever. On.
To Peter, the Griffins make it out totally fine. But also thanks to Peter, they've run out of food.
Thank goodness Peter bought a huge supply of dehydrated meals before the blast. Peter, what are you doing?
With civilization now in ruin, though, where are they going to get clean food? Desperate, the family sets out for Natick, Massachusetts, in the hopes that a Twinkie factory survived the blast. You know what they say.
There are only two things that can survive a nuclear holocaust: cockroaches and Twinkies.
On the way, Stewie gets exposed to some leftover nuclear waste, and though it doesn't seem to do much at first, it soon turns him into a strange octopus-like creature. When they finally reach the factory, Peter takes charge and decides they should rebuild society and build out from the factory. They name their new home New Quahog, and for a while, things work out just fine. But Peter's terrible leadership sends the town spiraling into chaos. Oh, and Octo Stewie is now laying eggs. Again, don't ask.
Yo, you know what this reminds me of? The Oblongs, because it was another show that came on Adult Swim, but it was like they lived in like by a nuclear waste pond and they all were like messed up or something like that. That's what this reminds me of. I was gonna like not say anything, but I forgot. The Oblongs, hell yeah. This is what that reminds me of.
The people of New Quahog banish Peter, Lois, and the kids, and they decide to head toward a Carvel factory in Framingham, hoping for a fresh start. Back in New Quahog, Stewie, who stayed behind, sees his eggs starting to hatch, and his monstrous offspring begin attacking and killing the townspeople. Now, this is where this episode goes a little over my head. Basically, this entire episode was a dream inside the head of a character from the show Dallas. Hey, it's a bit before my time, but I think it's because all of season 9 of Dallas was a dream and it didn't happen. Anyway, yep. Pretty good episode in general. It's Quahog's annual Harvest Festival parade.
And who the hell is Dallas? Like, who is that?
And somehow, Peter gets the nod to pick this year's theme. He opts for... Hold on a second.
And that's why Family Guy is also cool to me, because I didn't realize it, but they do have, like, real people in the show. They have, like, live actors, but then they'll sometimes have, like, just random people, like, you know, Dallas. Like, I don't know her name. Like, who the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? They'll have, like, actual real, like, people in the show, too. So it's kind of like a, you know, like a live, not like a live show, but it's like interactive. It has like real life in it type shit. Like it exists in like some, if you were to, like, you know what I'm saying, ever like you ever make like a conspiracy video about this or some shit, you could argue that it exists in some world or some real reality because there's real people in it, you know? So.
Check my notes. The episode of Who's the Boss?
That's mine. Unfreaking believable.
In which Tony sees Angela naked.
Like, for example, hold on, I'm going to stop the video again. I'm sorry, I'm yapping here. But for example, we could just argue and say that just because we saw that episode, you could say, you know what I'm saying, if you could find other videos to support it, but just based off that, we could say that Family Guy could just be an entire, you know, reality inside of the character Dallas's head, you know what I'm saying? And maybe there's more evidence to support that, maybe there's not, but based off that episode, you could argue that, because we just saw that she woke up from some dream, you know what I'm saying? She dreamed of Family Guy, she woke up from it, and then, you know what I'm saying, it was just, you know, she went to go talk to her husband, or whoever the man was, but we saw a real person waking up, you know what I'm saying? We saw all this imagined, we saw a real person waking up, and then interacting with another real person. So, you could argue that.
Gets to work building their float, and somehow, against all odds, they actually win. But the hair in Spooner Street Soup is that none of them can decide who's going to keep the trophy. After plenty of bickering, they come up with a compromise. Instead of keeping it at one person's house, they mount it above the road, held up by statues from the float. Sounds good and fair, right? Well, in the morning, everybody wakes up to the trophy missing. Suspicion spreads across the neighborhood. No one trusts anybody, and paranoia takes over. People start rigging their homes with traps, stocking up on weapons, and basically preparing for war. Meg, meanwhile, has problems of her own. After being humiliated at school for her cheap purse, she decides she needs a Prada bag to fit in. To get the money, she takes a job at Flappy Jack's House of Pancakes. But earning tips the honest way isn't cutting it. So she comes up with a plan. She convinces her boss, Flappy, that Stewie is her crack-addicted baby and that she's a struggling single mother. Like father, like daughter.
Being a single mother is hard, but the real challenge is having a baby that's addicted to crack.
The lie works, and customers start feeling sorry for her, leaving bigger tips. One guy is so moved that he even asks for her address, supposedly to help her out. But instead, it was the CPS, who sends an agent out to investigate. So fearing the worst, the agent heads to the Griffin home and places Stewie in foster care, leaving Peter and Lois to fight for their kids. While that whole thing is going on, Brian points out that the whole trophy thing is what started this mess in the first place. Realizing that they're all at fault, the whole neighborhood sets aside their differences and focuses on getting Stewie back. Left with no other choice, they offer Meg's brand new Prada bag in exchange for Stewie's release. Like I said before, money talks, and so do purses. With Stewie home safe, there's just the little problem of the trophy. Well, it turns out a certain red-collared white dog might have not been telling the entire truth. In the episode, Death is a Bitch, Lois notices a lump on Peter's chest and immediately starts to worry. Convinced that it could be cancer, she urges him to see a doctor. Luckily, the old lump is just some harmless fatty deposit. You know, a life of booze and fast food will do that to a guy. But now there's another issue. Peter sees the hospital bill and decides that he'd rather be dead than pay.
This sucks, Brian. Why should I have to pay this? I mean, there's nothing wrong with me.
No, really. Turns out faking your own death has consequences. Usually legal, but in Peter's case, it's more so paranormal, as Death himself shows up ready to take Peter away.
Which one of you is Peter Griffin?
He is.
The fat man makes a break for it with Death hot on his heels. As it turns out, Death isn't exactly the most coordinated of ethereal beings and ends up spraining his ankle. He stays over at the Griffin house to heal and tells Peter that no one can know where Death is and why he's missing in action. Well, after a few drinks, he lets the cat out of the bag. The news.
I just wanted to pause it too. That'd be crazy, bro. Like, what? Because, like, how would you, like, I don't know, because then once word, like, spread, like, because nowadays, right, like, what if word got out, you couldn't, you know what I'm saying, unalive yourself or die, you couldn't die or whatever, like, and then that spread on social media, like, once Death, like, I don't know, like, once he came back and shit, like, how would you get people to stop, like, killing themselves without being, you know, without actually being killed? Because then eventually, once Death came back, a lot of people would die, which is why he didn't want Peter to say all that shit. So yeah, that's it. I'm just like thinking how that would work out in like today's world and shit. But it's cool. It made a cool ass episode. Not
It spreads fast, and the town descends into madness, knowing they have no consequences for their actions. Realizing things have gotten way out of hand, Death forces Peter to step in and take over his job. Somebody has got to reap souls, I guess.
Boy, this doesn't leave much to the imagination, does it?
If Peter can prove that people can still die, maybe everything will go back to normal. His first task is to take out the cast of Dawson's Creek who are mid-flight. But when he realizes other innocent passengers would be caught in the crossfire, he backs out, only to accidentally kill 2 pilots, leaving Karen Black to land the plane herself. Real nice, Peter, real nice. This is all that Death needs to see. His ankle is better and he springs back into action, relieving Peter of his grim duties. And just like that, the balance of life and death is once again restored.
We're gonna miss you, Death.
Hey, don't worry. I'll be back really, really soon.
In the episode I Am Peter, Hear Me Roar, the Spooner Street residents all get a letter promising free boats if they sit through a timeshare pitch. Sounds simple enough, even for Peter, right? Wrong, as he's made an offer that he cannot refuse.
Boat or the mystery box?
What are you, crazy? We'll take the boat.
No, not so fast, Lois.
Free boats are nice, but hey, comedy is comedy. At the club, a drunk Peter stumbles on stage and starts ruining the show, yelling at the audience and being a general loudmouth drunk. But when he accidentally spills beer on his pants, they erupt in laughter, and he thinks that they're laughing with him.
You like a little abuse, huh?
Mistaking looking like he's peed himself with being a comedy genius, Peter gets the bright idea to tell some sexist jokes at work. Sure, they're a hit with the men, but a female coworker overhears him and complains to her lawyer.
So you got something to look at while you're talking to him.
Gloria Ironbox, which by the way is a great name, forces Peter into sensitivity training, but when that fails, he's sent to a woman's retreat. You know, to really get the experience of what it's like to be a woman. Peter returns home with his femininity in full force. And at first, Lois really loves it, but it's not long until it goes completely overboard. I actually don't really have words to describe what I've made you just watch, so we're gonna move on. Peter and Lois head out to a woman's charity dinner where Gloria congratulates Peter on his new respectful attitude towards women. But she takes her compliments too far and insults Lois and the kids. A full-on catfight breaks out between her and Gloria. And watching the two women fight triggers Peter's man brain, and just like that, he's back to his old self. In Road to Rhode Island, Brian visits his psychiatrist and ends up talking about being born in a puppy mill, opening up about his relationship with his mom and the memory he has of being ripped away. Brian then goes to pick Stewie up from Palm Springs, but on the way back, realizes that their tickets back to Quahog have been stolen. With no way home, They check into a rundown motel for the night. As they hitchhike toward Quahog, they pass a puppy mill. The same mill where Brian was born. They stop to look around, and Brian is horrified to find that his mom has passed. But instead of being buried like usual,
older.
The mill owners have had her stuffed. Wanting better for his mom, Brian and Stewie give her some of her dignity back and perform the burial before heading back home once more. The next episode on the list is a classic, titled E Peterbus Unum, and it begins with Peter finding out his neighbors got tax refunds and spent them on gifts for themselves. Oh, and talking of his neighbors, I think it's as good a time as any to introduce them. For those of you who have been living under a rock, that is. First up is Glenn Quagmire, part-time pilot and full-time peeping Tom. Then you've got Joe Swanson, the macho paraplegic police officer who's just a little bit pathetic. He lives with his pregnant wife Bonnie, and last but not least is Cleveland Brown. He's cool. He's all about being chill and lives with his wife Loretta. You may want to remember her name as she'll be coming up shortly. Anyway, back to this episode. Cleveland gets a trampoline. Joe upgrades to a digital TV with surround sound, and Quagmire buys a plug-in doll. Peter, hoping to build a swimming pool, gets a harsh reality check when he's audited by the IRS and denied a refund. Spurred on by the rejection, he starts digging to make his own pool anyway, only to cut a power line. When the electric company shows up, they inform him that town zoning laws prohibit pools. But the real shock comes when Mayor Adam West tells him his house isn't even part of the United States.
Like that. He's like, he was, dude, his eyes were like, it's like he was rush drawn, bro. Like, they didn't really want to draw his ass.
But not Peter Griffin. Instead, he declares his home an independent nation, officially naming it Pretoria. Now a self-proclaimed world leader, he struts downtown flaunting his power, breaking every minor law that he can think of. He even performs this.
You're coming with me. Can't touch me.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
So stupid.
After a little bad advice from an Iraqi diplomat, Peter decides Pretoria needs to expand. So he annexes Joe's swimming pool and renames it Joe-Hio. This does not sit well with the US government, and soon Pretoria finds itself surrounded by military tanks and missiles. The US cuts off power and water. Chris is banned from school, and Lois is forced to homeschool the kids. The US gives Peter a decision to make. Either surrender Pretoria or face Operation Bomb the Crap Out of Your House. You know, I think I'd go for option 2. Lois and the kids abandon him, leaving Peter no choice but to negotiate. He agrees to give up his country, returning Joe's pool. And once again, everything as it was. They'll be talking about the legend of Pretoria for years. No, really, I mean it. To kick off Season 3, in the episode The Thin White Line, Brian is in the middle of a talk with his therapist, explaining that he's in a bit of a rut with his life. His therapist agrees that things have gotten on top of him lately, and maybe getting out and about doing some volunteering work might brighten Brian up. He tries a few different things, mainly being a guide dog, but things don't really click for him until Joe gives him the chance to join the Quahog police force as their new drug detection dog. On his first day on the force, Brian manages to take down a criminal with an entire suitcase full of the devil's dandruff, which at the time was around $200,000. Brian might be enjoying his job a little bit too much, though.
Don't move, dirtbag! It's Coke! Yes!
As someone with a clear addictive personality...
Same, but he's doing it too. Well, what's this? Scientists mystified by paper rain, never noticed that. But yeah, he's like, he's
Brian's job goes from less about crime fighting and more about drug scoring. He's now constantly high, and the family has noticed. So they staged an intervention. They managed to get Brian to give up his habit and go into a rehab facility. The only problem is that the family were planning on going on vacation, but that will have to go on hold until Brian is feeling better. Well, not where Peter's concerned. He still wants a vacation, so he fakes his own addiction so that he can spend some quality time in the detox clinic, and plus, he wants to be with his best friend Brian. It's not long, though, before Peter's causing trouble in the clinic and forces Brian out.
I'm also addicted to boobies.
With the doctors telling Peter that he is the X factor in pushing Brian towards drugs. Peter signs himself out and heads home, where Brian tells the family that he's responsible for his own journey now, that he has to go it alone. Yeah, well, that worked great last time. Regardless, he hails a cab and heads off for Hollywood. Brian goes to Hollywood and tries to make a fist of it as a screenwriter. He even wins an award.
It's like, whoa, was Brian actually gone? Is he never coming back? Like, did he just leave the show? I was tweaking out as a kid, bro. I was like, man.
However, that episode isn't really next on our list. Oh no. The next episode we'll be covering, Death Lives, sees the return of, well, death. It's Peter and Lois's wedding anniversary, and to celebrate, Peter sends Lois on a scavenger hunt. Not some big romantic gesture or anything, he's just trying to keep her busy so he can go golf at the Barrington Club. While on the course though, Peter's pitch and putt goes a little south when a bolt of lightning strikes him down, sparking death to rear his hooded head. Peter isn't quite dead though. He's in a limbo state, a near-death experience, you know what I mean. Death tells Peter that he's not there to claim his soul, but to instead talk about his soulmate.
Oh. Yeah, thank God. Thank God I get to hang out with a fascinating gent like yourself.
Wanting to save his life and his marriage, Peter takes Death's help and goes back in time to when he and Lois first started dating.
Oh my God!
Their tour of the past is short-lived, but strong enough to give Peter a much-needed shot of action in the arm. He realizes that Lois is underappreciated and needs to fix it fast. He asks Death to meet celebrity singer-songwriter Peter Frampton, who's one of Lois's favorite artists, and convinces him to serenade her as his real anniversary gift. We all knew that he was a big softie at heart. In the episode Mission Impossible, Peter and Lois go to visit her pregnant sister Carol, leaving Quagmire to babysit the kids. He wouldn't be my first choice, but okay. When they arrive, Carol suddenly goes into labor, so the pair rush her to the hospital, but not without a little pit stop.
I'll have 3 cheeseburgers.
Peter, for God's sake, she's having a baby.
Problem is, Peter has to deliver the baby on his own because Dr. Hartman accidentally knocks himself out. And to his surprise, the experience is amazing. And he returns home excited, telling Lois he wants another kid. 3 griffins is enough for anybody. And luckily, Stewie agrees with me.
Another baby? But I'm the baby.
He doesn't want to lose his place as the youngest and decides to stop them from having another baby. When nothing seems to work, Stewie decides to ramp up his efforts, using a shrink ray and a tiny spaceship.
Like, how the fuck does he fit that in his, like, room, bro? Like, he's supposed to be a toddler. I don't know. Like, he has well, then again, he has a whole time machine in his room, too, and no one questions it or, like, no adults, like, see that shit and, like, think anything of it. Like, what?
He shrinks himself down and travels inside Peter's body to destroy his sperm before a new sibling can be conceived. Blast you, vile woman.
I can't stop them from the outside. I'll stop them from the inside.
Now, inside, he wipes out all the tadpoles except for one, Bertram. Unlike the others, Bertram is smart, quick, and just as clever as Stewie. The two battle for control, but instead of destroying each other, they realize they have a lot in common. With Bertram's help, Stewie sees new possibilities, mainly the idea of getting rid of Lois. They part as allies, but Stewie barely makes it out before his ship returns to full size. Lois begins to doubt whether having another kid is a good thing for the family, and despite Stewie trying to push them together, Peter ends up in the bathroom with a magazine. Yeah, Stewie's devastated, believing that Bertram is gone forever. Then
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that as a kid. Okay, that's what he was doing, which is weird because you have your wife, and then, well, then again, she said she wasn't down. So okay, I didn't realize that. Yo, this makes sense.
Jeez, sometimes Family Guy is like a little heartwarming. But then you remember the context in which that heartwarming thing happened. Anyway, the next episode, Blind Ambition, isn't really super important, but it is the episode where Ernie shows up. It's a little more convoluted than the last, but Ernie knows how to fight, and he takes Peter on a tour of air, land, and sea. Also, they spoof Indiana Jones, which is pretty cool. A little while ago, I told you guys to keep Loretta in mind, as she's going to pop up later. Well, her time has come. In the episode The Cleveland Loretta Quagmire, Loretta starts having an affair with Quagmire.
Shut up and put some more of that sugar in my bowl.
Damn.
Usually, people who cheat are full of guilt or shame, but not Loretta. She blames Cleveland for the way things have turned out. And when Cleveland finds out about the cheating and confronts her, she kicks him out. Cleveland might have known she was cheating, but he didn't know it was with one of his best friends. So when he finds out, he goes crazy, which is totally valid. Quagmire escapes, and after some shenanigans with Mayor West, calls Cleveland to apologize. The pair make up, but the same can't be said for Cleveland and Loretta, who actually decide to part ways. Quagmire still feels a little guilty, though, and he should. So to make sure Cleveland is okay with him, he insists they have a boxing match where Cleveland can fairly unleash any pent-up anger. In the episode Petarded, the Griffins invite their neighbors over for game night. While playing Trivial Pursuit, Lois secretly gives Peter the preschool edition questions to make him feel smart.
Peter's questions to the preschool edition. Just to let him have his moment.
Yo, a grown-ass man. He's like 40 plus.
But immediately becomes unbearable, bragging and boasting like he's a big-brained boffin. Brian gets fed up and challenges him to apply for the MacArthur Genius Grant to prove just how smart he really is. So he takes the test, and it confirms what we already knew. Peter is gutted by the news at first, but everything changes when he accidentally runs over Tom Tucker. Basically, Tom views Peter as the mentally handicapped guy who hit him. So instead of calling the cops, he lets it slide. Peter quickly realizes that his diagnosis gives him a free pass to do whatever he wants, and he takes full advantage.
Sorry, retarded.
Oh, that's okay.
But things go too far when he tries to steal a deep fryer from a fast food restaurant and spills hot grease all over Lois.
Worse than that Rocky Dennis kid from MASH.
While she recovers in the hospital, Child Protective Services steps in. Agent Jessup decides Peter is unfit to be a parent and takes the kids
That's technically domestic abuse, right?
away, placing them in Cleveland's care. Brian tells Peter he just needs to prove that he's a good parent to get the kids back. So Peter comes up with a terrible plan. Instead of proving he's responsible, he tries to make Cleveland look like a bad father by filling his house with prostitutes. You know, the standard stuff. The plan obviously fails immediately. Agent Jessup sees right through it, and Cleveland throws Peter and most of the prostitutes out, which is followed by Peter being put on trial to prove that he can be a responsible father. His emotional speech falls flat, and he barely escapes going to jail. He heads home defeated, only for Lois to return from the hospital, allowing the kids to come back home too. Well, I guess the moral of the story is, I don't know, actually. Could somebody tell me? Season 4, the courtship of Stewie's father, is the first time we really see a famous relationship start to blossom. No, not Peter and Lois or Joe and Bonnie. Chris and Herbert. After smashing Herbert's window with his baseball, Chris has to pay back the damages by doing chores for the old weirdo. Might be a little timid compared to some of the stuff that he says and does in later episodes, but I thought you should see where it all began.
You know, if you get sweaty and want to take your shirt off, that'd be just fine.
PTV is the next episode on our list, and it begins with Peter being extremely excited about the upcoming Emmy Awards. But it's short-lived as Lois reminds him he's got Meg's boring school play to watch. He ends up going, but not without trying to watch the ceremony.
Excuse me, I gotta go.
This shit is someone's hair, bro.
Go do
like,
some
what?
black ass stuff.
Back home, Peter is furious when he finds out he missed David Hyde Park accidentally exposing himself on live television. At the FCC headquarters, the Board of Commissioners debates how to handle the situation.
FCC got
They
involved.
decide they must crack down on inappropriate content and start heavily censoring television. The FCC quickly goes to work cutting anything remotely offensive from TV. They even have a problem with Dick Van Dyke's name. Peter is outraged and decides to fight back. With advice from Tom Tucker, he launches his own network, PTV, where he airs unedited classic shows along with his own original, uncensored programming.
With all the sex, violence, swearing, and farts intact.
Lois is disgusted by Peter's over-the-top content and calls the FCC to complain. In response, Peter, Brian, and Stewie put on a big musical performance mocking the FCC's ridiculous censorship rules. The FCC then roll in and shuts down the network. But they're not done yet. When Peter tells them they can't control people, they take it as a challenge. They expand their censorship to all of Quahog.
Or I'd never put up with you. You know what I'm talking about.
When Lois realizes the new laws are ruining everybody's personal lives, she admits that Peter was right, which might be like the first time ever. Anyway, together they head to Congress to fight for their rights.
The Washington Monument. Looks an awful lot like a penis, doesn't it?
So with this realization, the FCC is told
show too where it's like, okay, what the fuck is really going on? Like, what am I watching right now? Like, how did this show go from this to that? Like, how are they at the nation's capital over some censorship type shit? Like, I don't know. It was weird. Like, how did the FCC get involved in like their life type shit? Like, what?
Told to dial it back, and cheap humor is once again king of TV. In Fat Guy Strangler, Lois discovers an old family photo that shows a brother that she never knew she had. Obviously. Now curious, she asks her dad for answers, but he's tight-lipped about it. She doesn't give up though, and instead sneaks into her mom and dad's house to find out more.
Are you sure this is a good idea?
Daddy's never gonna tell me the truth.
Lois finally tracks down her brother Patrick in a mental hospital. And after just a few minutes of talking, Lois decides to bring him home, where he tells Lois that as a baby, he accidentally walked in on their mother having an affair with Jackie Gleason. An experience that scarred him for life. If you don't know, Jackie Gleason was like a fairly big guy, so when Peter meets Patrick, his size triggers the traumatic memory. And we soon see why he's in a mental hospital.
Wow, that set him off like a Paul Schaefer fire alarm.
At first, Lois refuses to believe her brother is the killer, even with clear evidence all around her. There are pictures of Patrick strangling fat men, a dead body in his room, and even a half-dead fat guy in Meg's room. Still, she tries to ignore the truth until she finally has no choice but to accept it and heads out with Brian to stop her brother. They time it well, because his latest victim is Peter. They manage to save Peter by talking Patrick down and sending him back to the mental hospital.
I mean,
Anybody else have power?
Yeah, that was a crazy episode too. Like I remember like watching, I was like, damn, so like the brother, like first off she has a brother. Next, they didn't tell her about the brother. Two, like I see why, because he's like, oh, I don't see why. It's kind of crazy. Like they could have sat down and told Lois, hey, you have like a brother, but he's like in a mental asylum because he's not mentally well. You know, they didn't have to hide him from her type shit. Like that's kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? And then like on top of that, I'm trying and I kind of yapping here, but turn this to a morale story, right? You can't just throw someone off because, you know what I'm saying, just throw someone off and disown them type shit, because that's how they get resentful. That's how they get mad, you know what I'm saying, at you. That's how they hold grudges. That's how they like start not liking you type shit, if you just throw them away and you don't give them any attention just because they're not how you want them to be type shit. So, you know, and do with that information what you will, or that perspective what you will. But yeah, don't like just throw them away. That's kind of wrong, right? To me, it is, at least.
Stuck right in their heads right now. I can't get over it.
Pow, right in the kitchen.
I remember that line too.
In Stu and Stewie's Excellent Adventure,
I remember
Stewie's
this too.
future self
I was
is
always
on the
confused. I was like, so does Stewie have like another dad? Did Lois cheat on Peter? Like what?
Vacation when present Stewie secretly stows away on his trip back to the future. You know, whenever time travel is involved, you've got to say Back to the Future. To avoid suspicion, Stu, which is his grown-up name, introduces Stewie as a Nicaraguan boy
that's Stewie
named...
this is Stewie in the future, my bad. Lois didn't, my bad. I was just yapping, my bad.
Pablo.
This is, Pablo, a child from Nicaragua that I've been sponsoring.
Stewie is horrified at his future. At 35, he'll be a lonely virgin working at the Quahog Circuit Shack and living in a filthy apartment. Well, that's like a quarter of the country. There's no shame in that. Determined to change his fate, Stewie gives Stu's apartment a makeover and pushes him to lose his virginity to his coworker Fran. Imagine that, you're getting wingmaned by a baby. It works though. And Fran tells everybody at work about their night together, and Stu gets fired for having a relationship with a coworker.
Damn.
When he returns home, he finds his apartment engulfed in flames after Stu's scented candles start a fire. With no job and nowhere to live, Stu breaks down, blaming everything on the day of his near-death experience at the community pool.
Hey, and I'm gonna pause and yap here too, bro. Like, just because, like, okay, with like the whole virgin thing, bro, like, don't be in such a rush, you know what I'm saying, to lose your virginity, bro. And honestly, I'd say it's best to wait on my religious stuff, just to wait until you're married, bro, because it's like, don't be in such a rush to like, or don't feel bad if you haven't lost it yet, bro. Like, just honestly, bro, it's best to wait, or don't feel bad, or don't get, you know, people tease you about it, like, don't let it get to you, bro. Like, low key, it's just better to wait anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Everything. They visit Lois at a retirement home and get a new time travel watch. Stewie travels back to the day of the accident and prevents himself from getting crushed by the pool chair. But in doing so, he creates a paradox. The moment past Stewie is saved, future Stewie's instantly vaporized, erasing him from existence. Poor dude. In Stewie Loves Lois, a flu epidemic hits
Hey,
Quahog,
so some Rick and Morty-ish where shit, well, okay, no, he went back in time though, so never mind, still the same family, but shit, that's on some Rick and Morty-ish, like that, like
Dr.
right
Hartman
there
to get
type
a
shit.
vaccine. If Peter Griffin can do it, so can you. While looking through Peter's records, Hartman realizes he's due for a prostate exam. Peter, not knowing what that means, agrees without hesitation. He tells Lois about the experience, but she tries to reassure him that it was a routine medical procedure. When he shares his story with the guys, they all claim they were violated in the same way. Hearing this, Peter's fear turns into rage and he decides to sue Dr. Hartman. Lois strongly opposes Peter's lawsuit, but he refuses to back down. This guy is never out of the courtroom, I'm serious. Hartman tries to defend himself, insisting it was a standard procedure, but Peter persuades the judge to see it from his twisted perspective. Hartman is found guilty and loses his medical license. It's all for nothing when he realizes that he actually does need Hartman's help. So he goes back to the doctor with his tail between his legs, hoping Hartman will replace that tail with his finger.
So anyway, this is... Oh, I gotta take a leak. There we go. Oh, pee time.
As we've seen a little already, Lois is pushed to her limit with Stewie and has a nightmare where she kills him just to get some peace. Shaken by her dream, Lois turns to Brian for advice. He tells her the only way to break Stewie's obsession is to ignore him completely. Though hesitant, Lois follows through. Stewie's devastated when he realizes she's no longer responding to him, so he has an idea.
Help! I ate this whole jar of pills that look like candy and now I feel sick!
Stewie rushes to his mom once more to try and get to the bottom of things, but as he does, he trips and falls down the stairs. Lois rushes to help, but the damage is done, and evil Stewie is back. And Peter's two dads, Peter and Lois start planning Meg's 17th birthday party. She doesn't like what they have in mind, though, and wants something a little more grown up. Peter, on the other hand, really wants to dress up as a dirty hobo clown, so he does. Then he tries to ride a unicycle down the stairs, and it doesn't go to plan.
Blow you guys away.
That's his own dad that he just crushed. Francis is rushed to hospital, but it's too late.
You're a fat, stinking drunk.
What a great birthday present for Meg. In light of his dad's death, Peter vows to never drink again. Instead, he has a better idea. He decides to smoke crack. I'm not even joking.
How do you escalate like that quickly? Like, those are two different like types of I don't know, like, how do you escalate from drinking to doing that, bro? Like, what? Concerned
for his well-being, Brian takes Peter to a hypnotherapist hoping to help him process his grief. But during the session, Peter uncovers a deeply hidden memory. Francis isn't his real dad.
Oh, shoot, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Who finally tells him the truth.
Yeah.
While on vacation in Ireland 40 years ago, she had an affair with an Irish man. That man is Peter's real father.
Yeah.
Determined to find him, Peter and Brian traveled to...
And this low-key makes sense as to why Peter's dad was always so grumpy and mean when he came around, because that wasn't his son. And then his, like, whether he actually, like, you know, that was his wife, you know what I'm saying, that had an affair with another man in a different country. You know what I'm saying? So that explains why he was, like, always so mean and grumpy to Peter, because, like, he wasn't his son, bro, and Peter didn't really know it, Taisha. They hid it from him. That's what I'm saying. Another thing too, like, don't like this so like I like Family Guy because I'm realizing like you can learn a lot like morally from it, depending on how you look at it, right? You know what I'm saying? Don't like be keeping secrets, you know what I'm saying? They're like, you shouldn't tell your kid right away, but I'm saying like, wait till they're a certain age and tell them this shit, you know what I'm saying? Don't just hold the secret forever or hold these feelings in forever and treat them a certain way their whole life until they figure the shit out by themselves, you know what I'm saying? Or never figure it out. So I don't know, I didn't realize how like moral, like there's like moral lessons in Family Guy, I guess, but it is true and real shit. But that, it makes a lot of sense now. It's making a lot more sense. And there's a lot of lore to Family Guy too, I didn't realize too. You know what I'm saying, just watching this. That's why I like watching these.
Wigan Village, which I think is just south of Dublin. When they ask around, the locals quickly point them to Mickey McFinnigan, who happens to be the town drunk. Yeah, this is gonna be Peter's dad. They finally meet Mickey at a local tavern, but Mickey doesn't believe that they're related. To prove himself, Peter challenges him to a drinking contest.
He'll have no choice but to respect me. Get me a beer, Brian.
Peter wins, earning Mickey's respect and convincing him that they must be father and son. Well, that and the fact that they look absolutely identical. It's time for some more poultry-packed action as Ernie the Giant Chicken returns in the episode No Chris Left Behind. It's another multi-location brawl that takes the pair on a tour through sewers, construction sites, and even a Ferris wheel. There's a small difference, though. Peter and Ernie actually bury the hatchet. They kind of forget about the whole reason they started fighting and decide to christen their new friendship with a meal. But when it comes to footing the bill, they're soon at each other's throats again. In Meet the Quagmires, Peter listens to Quagmire brag about his wild love life and starts feeling like he missed out on the fun of being single. Wishing he had the chance to experience the fun for himself, he suddenly gets an unexpected opportunity. Death shows up at the Drunken Clam on a false alarm and decides to grant Peter's wish, sending him and Brian back to 1984 for one night. Appearing as his 18-year-old self, Peter ditches his movie date with Lois and instead goes partying with Cleveland.
It's gonna be fun.
It is?
Just as he's getting into the swing of things, death returns to bring him back to the present. When Peter gets home, he quickly realizes that changing the past has completely altered the world. Obviously. He and actress Molly Ringwald have been married for 20 years. Lois is now with Quagmire. Surprisingly, everything seems to be better with Lois and Peter never getting together. But even still, Peter begs Death to send him back so he can fix his mistake. Back in 1984, Peter is determined to go on a date with Lois, but time and time again, he messes up and makes the wrong choice.
Sucks. Why don't we go see
I was watching this, bro, like, how does he mess up? Because if you watch the episode, bro, like, he keeps going to, like, party with Cleveland, or he keeps going to do some random stupid shit. I'm like, dude, how do you keep messing up this fucking bad? Like, what?
Peter, you know I'm dying to see Zapped.
Realizing he's running out of chances, Peter and Brian sneak into a country club dance to stop the moment that made Lois fall for Quagmire. Desperate, Peter finally steps up. He asks Lois to marry him. She agrees, and the two reconnect their original timeline. Well, nearly. The episode Blue Harvest is another classic episode, but it's just the original Star Wars movie told by Peter during an electric blackout.
Brothers and sons, and the foresight to retain international merchandising rights.
Fun episode, but not important. In Believe It or Not, Joe's Walking on Air, Joe is sick and tired of seeing Bonnie so disappointed by his disability that he signs himself up for a leg transplant surgery. He leapfrogs the waiting list and the procedure, and guess what? Everything goes A-okay. With his newfound mobility, Joe starts to live life in the fast lane, doing all sorts of things that he couldn't do while he was disabled, like being in a high-energy musical dance number or going all out at a karate class. He also starts to fade away from the rest of his usual friend group, seeing them as a past necessity because they were lazy and he was crippled. He even decides he wants to leave Bonnie, which is kind of insane because she's the reason he got the surgery in the first place.
He's like, because you gotta think, right? Like, he'd be a lot more active if he had his legs. Now, because he's stationary, he has no other choice but to go, you know what I'm saying, to go drink after work or to go, you know what I'm saying, like he could go, he still go to the gym, but it's not like the same. I don't know, to him, it's not the same. He's a lot more, limited, obviously, you know what I'm saying, with his legs like that. But, you know, when he's fully mobile and stuff like that, that's when he's like living his best life, I guess you could say.
Taking their friend back, the guys head out to try and re-cripple Joe. Not even joking. He easily fights them off, but he can't fight off a cold metal bullet fired by Bonnie into his back that re-cripples him again. I mean, I guess I get it to some extent. You're being a jerk, but imagine your friend seeing you happy for once and then they shoot you. Not cool. The episode Stewie kills Lois begins on Lois's birthday, where on the whole she gets pretty underwhelming gifts. Luckily, though, Brian steps up and surprising her with cruise tickets. Peter and Lois head off for the cruise, leaving Stewie a little upset that his mom is leaving him.
No, you can't leave! Not without me! I'm the baby!
So upset that he plans to kill her. It's not all smooth sailing on the cruise, as Peter is busy being himself.
For months to get this abortion.
Peter!
Hang on, Lois, don't ruin it.
Embarrassed, Lois storms off, where she runs into a stowaway Stewie who's ready to get his revenge. I've watched this episode like a million times, yet I still can't believe he actually pulls the trigger. 6 days later, Lois is presumed dead.
When it first came out, it was like an hour long. I think it was like a movie type shit. And I think it was like a 2-part, 1 hour long each type shit, like movie type deal. Or they made it seem like a big deal. It was like a special. I remember it was like a special when they actually like aired it.
And Stewie is thrilled that no one suspects him. Joe informs Peter that the search is over, and he must accept that Lois is gone. A year passes, and the family moves on. Peter starts dating. Chris believes Lois is at the spa, and Meg thrives in her absence. But Brian grows suspicious when Stewie hints that her death wasn't an accident.
Stewie, did you kill Lois?
While having a couple of beers, Peter mentions
another thing
that
I want to
Lois
add on here, and I don't know, they might discuss later in the episode. We gotta, and I'm pretty sure, no, because it had happened by this time. Is that like Brian has feelings for Lois too, you know what I'm saying? So this must have like affected him, like, you know, her like death must have affected him in a way too, you know what I'm saying? And that's why we just saw that clip of him reacting the way he was. Just to give, you know, additional background context, because I've watched the show. Ryan has feelings for Lois and shit like that, so that's why he was low key like kind of feeling it or like reacting the way he was just back there too.
His life insurance is finally paid out.
Just in case you
didn't know. He unintentionally makes himself look guilty by revealing he took out the policy during the cruise. Meanwhile, Stewie throws away his gun and drawings, but Joe and the others find them, thinking Peter made them himself. Peter's trial begins, and Brian tries to convince Meg and Chris of his innocence. Peter's testimony only worsens things, and he's found guilty of first-degree murder. Luckily for him, a mysterious figure enters the courtroom and stops the proceedings. It's Lois, and she's ready to expose exactly who tried to kill her. Following straight on from the last episode, Lois kills Stewie, picks up where we left off, with Lois dropping the bombshell that Stewie is the one who pulled the trigger. Everyone is obviously confused, but she insists it's true, and explains. But while she's telling her tale, Stewie has made a break for it, and goes into hiding. The Griffins head home, exhausted from everything, only to find Stewie waiting for them. He's fully armed and knows his cover's been blown.
Like, this was, like, seeing Stewie, like, finally, like, make his move and take over was crazy to me.
He ties them up while he figures out his next move. I don't think this was the next move, though. To complete his evil plan, Stewie then forces Brian to drive him to CIA headquarters. Once there, Stewie and Brian disguise themselves as agents and manage to slip inside. Stewie hacks into the CIA supercomputer and complete his evil plan. Stewie then forces. But while she's telling her tale, Stewie has made a break for it and goes into hiding. The Griffins' CIA headquarters. Once there.
Okay, so this is Stan from American Dad, by the way, too. Because I don't know, I thought it was cool how they did a crossover, because they're made by the same people. They both come on Adult Swim type shit. But it was cool how they went to the CIA and actually like ran into him and interacted with him. It was at the time, like I automatically knew, like when I was watching this, I automatically knew like what was happening, what was going on. I was like, that's Stan from American Dad, because they're at the CIA, which means that Family Guy and American Dad exist in the same reality, and we've seen that we've seen that too. I think there's been episodes where Roger was in Family Guy or something like that too.
As agents and manage to slip inside. Stewie hacks into the CIA supercomputer and gains control of the world's power grid, and we get a special cameo.
Yeah.
Stewie then threatens to shut off electricity across the planet. They have no choice but to give in, and he becomes the new president of the world. Back in Coag, Lois has finally had enough. She knows she's the only one who can stop him, so she arms herself with weapons from Stewie's own arsenal and sets off to take him down.
Damn,
she smashes through the
this is badass too, seeing like the Lois versus Stewie fight, because this is like the first time that out of all the years in Family Guy that they finally acknowledged that like Stewie is like he killed Lois or is finally trying to kill Lois. Like it's crazy to me, but like yeah, now it's like boom, like now they're finally going at it like type shit.
Window, guns blazing, and takes on Stewie. Problem is, she's still a mom at the end of the day, and she just can't go through with hurting her baby. Even though if she wasn't such a lousy shot, he'd be long gone.
Yeah.
Stewie, on the other hand, has no issue with pulling the trigger. He aims at Lois, ready to finish what he started, but not all is as it seems.
Hey, Stewie, we got a postcard from Peter and Lois.
Then it was just a simulation.
Season 7's I Dream of Jesus might be the episode that's about the return of Christ, but we all know it's mainly about the debut of Peter's favorite song.
Well, a bird, bird, bird. A bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word.
Peter becomes completely obsessed, playing and singing Surfin' Bird non-stop, driving everybody insane. Gets so bad that he even blows their savings on a public service announcement just so he can perform the song on TV. Desperate to put an end to the madness, Stewie and Brian steal the record while Peter sleeps.
And everybody knows that the bird is a word.
The next morning, Peter wakes up and immediately accuses the family of stealing his beloved record, so he heads to a record store to get another copy. At Dead Format Records, the clerk tells Peter that every single copy, all 63, have been sold to a dog and a baby. I wonder who that could be. Peter's obsession takes a pause though as he realizes that standing before him is Jesus Christ. Jesus explains that he comes to Earth every 100 years or so to relax, but tries to keep a low profile. Peter ignores that and convinces Jesus to start socializing. He invites him over for dinner, where the family instantly realizes he really is the Messiah, not just a naughty record-selling boy.
Yeah, also to the young... Okay, I didn't mean to pause it here. But also to the younger generation that's going to be watching this, bro. I just noticed that Jar Tunes had to do this. They had to, like, put the square and, like, put the paper background. Because they didn't have high-definition background. Like, the TVs weren't made for it. So that's why, like, all old videos you'll see, and this is to the younger generation. All older videos you'll see, they're going to be, like, square like this. Because, like, back in, like, the early 2000s, they didn't have, like, the full, you know what I'm saying, thing to take up the full screen. So... But this is insane.
Jesus enjoys himself so much that he decides it's finally time for his big second coming. Word spreads fast. Jesus becomes a full-blown celebrity, but it's not long before he comes crashing back down to Earth.
Jesus Christ, look at you. You had it all. Money, fame, eternal life.
Luckily, Peter forgives Jesus for turning his back on him and bails him out. Turns out Jesus wasn't so ready to return after all, so he thanks Peter by giving him a special gift. A gift that everyone has heard. Because, to my understanding, everybody has heard.
I like how they do, like, again, and I like this too, how they're, like, they put in religion, but they do it in a stupid, like, funny way. Like,
in Steroids, Stewie gets into a fight with Joe's baby daughter Susie at one of their shindigs.
Damn.
Embarrassed that his own son got beaten up by a baby girl, Peter decides Stewie needs to toughen up. So he takes him to the Quahog boxing gym to make him a man. While there, one of the trainers gives Peter some steroids to help Stewie bulk up. Nice job, Peter, giving your baby a diet of Lucky Charms and anabolic steroids. Parenting choices aside, it does work, and Stewie becomes seriously ripped. But it doesn't last. Once the steroids wear off, Stewie's body deflates, leaving him with loose, saggy skin. Meanwhile, at school, Connie D'Amico has dated and dumped every popular guy. So she decides to switch things up and go out with Chris. Why, you ask? Well, her idea is to build up and then smash his self-esteem. Not sure why you'd want to be so cruel. But this idea deflates faster than Stewie's biceps, as Chris is a genuine sweetheart, to the point that she decides to stay with him. Unfortunately, popularity goes straight to Chris's head. He gets full of himself and starts cheating on Connie. So she teams up with Meg, who's also annoyed with Chris for ditching her now that he's popular. So they get revenge by sending this video of Chris around the school. Alright, that's enough of that. Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. The episode that might not be your favorite, might not be my favorite, but it is the episode that consistently tops the charts for Family Guy's best episode, Road to the Multiverse. As the title suggests, Stewie introduces Brian to the multiverse theory and reveals a remote control that lets them travel between alternate universes. He wastes no time testing it out, taking Brian to the world where he got a genetically mutated jacked pig.
Oink. Oh my god!
In this universe, Christianity never existed, meaning there were no Dark Ages, so science advanced 1,000 years ahead of its time, as well as a different version of Meg. They start hopping through various universes. My favorite a lot is obviously
they already did. They technically already did, like, Rick and Morty before it was a thing then type shit, just going through different multiverses and shit. But it's still different. It's still different. Cause I was talking about Rick and Morty in the beginning of the video. It's still different though. The shows are still two very different things though.
Styled universe. I mean, come on.
It's a wonderful day for pie. You can.
How good does that pie look? Brian and Stewie don't stay too long though, as they need to get back home, but the problem is they're kind of tangled between universes and end up cycling through them before landing in one where humans are subservient to dogs. Obviously, Brian is like a kid at Christmas and immediately wants to stay, but when he and Stewie fight over the remote, it slips from their hands and shatters on the sidewalk.
What the hell?
hell, man?
Stewie lets Brian leash him before
Yeah,
the
that's
pair
that
make
Brian getting greedy, saying, I don't want to go back. I want to stay in control now.
their way to the Griffin house, where they meet the dog versions of the Griffin family. Dog Stewie wants to play with human Stewie and takes him aside for a chat. He reveals that he has also discovered how to travel between universes, but as a much better system. One that allows him to input exact coordinates instead of jumping around randomly.
Okay, so the
He
dog
offers
Stewie's
to
like a
take them
genius
home.
Stewie, too.
But before he can grab the device, Dog Peter provokes human Stewie and he bites Peter's hand. Which, you know, is a serious crime in this world. Dog Joe sees the whole thing and immediately arrests Stewie, taking him to the pound to be put down. Having broken Stewie out of the pound, Brian, human Brian Stewie, and Dog Stewie race back to the house, using the device and finally open a portal back to their own universe. Just as they step through, human Brian asks if he can go with them as he'd actually have a life. He'd be someone instead of just a pet.
My God, he got hit by a car.
Ouch. So much for being someone.
Damn.
In Dial Meg for Murder, Brian lands a writing gig and is assigned to cover the life of a typical American teenage girl. He decides to follow Meg for inspiration, expecting to write about school crushes and that sort of junk, but quickly realizes that she's been sneaking off to prison to visit Luke. Luke is an inmate there. Shocked by what he discovers, Brian tells the family, and they immediately shut it down. They forbid Meg from speaking to Luke again, but she doesn't listen. Luke escapes from prison and makes matters worse for Meg by coming to her for help. Peter finds out and alerts Joe, who wastes no time tracking him down. The escapee is captured, but Meg is arrested as an accessory to his escape. She has her own short stint in prison, but when she's let out, she is not the same person.
Yeah,
prison
that's right.
has hardened her. And after years of being treated like a joke by her own family, she's had enough. So to get out of town, she plans on robbing Goldman's pharmacy. Just as she's about to go through with it, Brian tries to talk her down, but Meg is convinced that no one in her life cares about her at all. Brian gently tells her she's wrong, and shows her the article that he wrote about her. His words are genuine and kind, and show Meg for who she really is. For the first time in a long time, Meg feels seen. She realizes that she's not as alone as she thought, and decides to give up her life of crime for being the person that we all know and sort of love. In the next episode, and then there were fewer. I love this one. Peter gets an invitation to a fancy dinner party thrown in his honor by an unknown host. So he decides to bring the whole family, and when they arrive, they realize they aren't the only ones invited. Turns out, everyone has been told they're the special guest of honor. So with broken egos, the guests head inside. Their host is soon revealed to be none other than James Woods. You know, Hades and, just Hades. He tells them he has become a born-again Christian and wants to make amends for all the wrong that he's done. Everyone is skeptical, but before they can question him further, Quagmire's new girlfriend Stephanie is shot. The group panics.
This episode was kind of cool because they're at this fancy dinner and it's like mysterious and shit. People are dying, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what? You know what I'm saying? It's James Woods. Like, he's been in episodes, but he's always been a weird character to me. Or he's always been on, like, I don't know, the weird, he's like more weird. He's not like a bad or a good guy. He's more like a weird, like, I don't know. He can be a wild card sometimes because there are episodes where he's good. There's episodes where he's bad, but he's like a weird, like, middle, weird, I don't know, weird scale character, bro. That's all I can say about him.
Did the cork hit me?
But in the show, he does have, like, schools named after him and shit. So, in Quahog, I guess he is, like, a figure type shit, or he is, like, he's known or he's important, I guess. But to me, he's weird.
Immediately suspects Woods, but before they can escape, a tree falls and blocks their only way off the island. Trapped with a possible murderer, they return to the mansion and try calling for help, but there's no cell service, and the landline has been cut and an argument breaks out.
You're a monster, James Woods. You think you could just commit murder and get away with it?
They take Woods to the crime scene, only to find that Stephanie's body is mysteriously vanished. But as the lights flicker, they're about to find that James Woods is innocent.
Look!
The group begins searching for clues. They find a gun that was rigged to go off at a certain time and was meant to kill Woods.
Damn, and no one saw that pause of the play?
With everyone having a personal grudge against Woods, tensions rise as accusations fly and a fight breaks out. In the chaos, they stumble upon a hidden study and find Woods' personal diary detailing all the terrible things he did to the people of Quahog over the years. Before they can process this, the lights go out again. When they come back on, Muriel Goldman is missing. The group assumes she must be the murderer and splits up to find her. But just like Mr. Woods, they're gonna find that she's innocent too.
And I am not saying another word until I talk to my lawyer, because why is he wearing shorts?
The group rush back to the lobby, only to find that Priscilla, Woods' girlfriend, is also missing. That's enough for them to assume that she must be behind everything. With the kill count rising, the group decides to stick together and agrees that whoever leaves them must be the killer. While searching their rooms, they find the award hidden under Tom Tucker's bed, along with the missing Priscilla and the ceiling vent.
You're going to jail, Tucker.
With Tom now arrested, Lois packs up to leave and takes a moment to check in with Diane, who's struggling with having to anchor the news alone. That's when the cogs turn in Lois's head and she thinks Diane might be the real killer. Yeah, we can't leave Peter without his fire engine. Diane doesn't buy Lois's act and confesses everything because basically, ever since turning 40, her life has been falling apart. She paid Priscilla to convince Woods to turn over a new leaf so she could lure him into the mansion and frame Tom.
And she does. It's weird. I like this because I like what about Family Guy is they actually use their side and background characters to like for again weird and funny shit. But like her, she doesn't play besides like a news anchor. She doesn't play much of a major role besides I guess in this episode. You know what I'm saying? So I guess it is cool how like the side characters do get their glory. You know what I'm saying?
For his murder.
And I think this was another one of those like special like hour-long episodes too, if I'm not mistaken.
Killed by accident, Diane had to start covering her tracks, taking out Priscilla, Muriel, and Derek to keep her alive. And Lois is next on the list. With Lois's death almost certain, a surprisingly good Samaritan steps up to take Diane out because if anybody's gonna kill Lois, it's gonna be him. Road to the North Pole begins with Brian taking Stewie to the mall to meet Santa. Hey, he might be an evil genius, but Stewie is still a kid, so of course he believes in Santa. His faith isn't repaid though, as the mall Santa snubs him.
What are you doing? Santa? You can't leave now.
Which is weird, bro, because you gotta think, if you're an evil genius, don't you, I don't know, like, doesn't that kind of contradict itself? Like, I get you're still a kid, but don't you, like, put two and two together if you're an evil genius? You know what I'm saying? You're an evil genius. You have the mind to, like, I don't know, you're a genius, bro. Like, don't you have, like, don't you just see through that shit and say, oh, Santa's not real? Like, I don't know, this kind of contradicts itself to me, but let me know what you think in the comments about that, but, yeah.
So, as usual, Stewie's hell-bent on revenge, and to do so forces Brian to drive him to the North Pole. Doesn't quite go to plan, but they do end up using a snowmobile to get there. They drive as far as they can until they run out of gas, forcing them to take shelter in an old cabin. The next morning, they set off on foot and eventually reach Santa's workshop. But instead of a magical holiday wonderland, they find something out of a nightmare.
A factory?
Inbred elves, monstrous reindeers, and Santa is a shell of the jolly old man that he used to be. Santa collapses, and leaving Brian and Stewie with no choice, they must step in and deliver the presents themselves.
Damn,
Their good intentions quickly go south, because they're at the North Pole, so they have to go south. Sorry. By morning, everybody wakes up to discover that no one has presents. So to save Christmas, Brian and Stewie go on live television and plead with the world to cut back on their gift requests. And the world agrees. Fast forwarding to a year later, Santa has recovered. The elves are back to normal, and Christmas is saved. Who knew Stewie's rage could turn him into a hero? In the episode The Big Bang Theory. No, nothing to do with the Jim Parsons. Stewie is at the butt of one of Brian's jokes.
What do you want to order? Oh wait, let me guess. Him.
He got you, Stewie!
Determined to have the last word, he decides to go back in time to fix his mistake. Finally, feeling victorious, he decides to take it even further and mess with Brian again, going back to an earlier episode of the show to steal more of Brian's limelight. Brian eventually figures out what Stewie's doing, and the two wrestle for control of the time machine. But in the struggle, they accidentally launch themselves out of the space-time continuum. To get themselves back to the present, Stewie decides to overload his return pad. This creates an explosion to propel them forward in time. Or more simply,
do think it's cool that how they actually incorporate time travel, and like I'm just glad they incorporate the shit in Family Guy. It makes it like a really diverse show and cool as fuck.
While all of this is happening, a forgotten evil rival is watching the pair. Bertram.
Oh shit!
He's back, and he sees the time machine as an advantage, sneaking in and traveling back to the past. It's clear that Bertram is doing serious damage to Stewie's timeline as things start to ripple around him. He's trying to stop Stewie from ever being born. To fix it, Stewie and Brian travel back 15 minutes before Bertram arrives in the past. They find themselves in Venice.
Okay, so see now we're at the point where like they have like the high definition now because he doesn't have to use the background. You know what I'm saying? See how it takes up the full screen now? We're at the point where they have HD now. Okay.
Late 1400s or early 1500s. After some quick research, Stewie realizes that Leonardo da Vinci is his ancestor. I don't think he needed that much research.
Random as fuck.
Just look at the guy.
That must be Leonardo da Vinci.
He figures out that since he and Bertram share DNA from Peter, Bertram must have gone this far back in time to eliminate Stewie without affecting his own existence. When Bertram arrives, he throws a knife at Leonardo, but Stewie jumps in front of it, using a painter's palette to block the attack. When Stewie regroups with Brian and Leonardo, Bertram corners them at crossbow point. Even after being warned that killing Leonardo could destroy the entire universe, Bertram doesn't care, and shoots him, leaving Stewie no choice but to fight. Brian looks around, expecting everything to start collapsing, but nothing happens. The universe is still intact. Stewie realizes that somewhere, there must still be a slim chance of himself being born, and he comes up with a mind-bending plan. Stewie injects his own DNA into Leonardo's girlfriend, essentially making himself into his own ancestor. To check if this works, Brian travels back to the present, where Stewie has cryogenically frozen himself under their basement waiting to be dug up.
That was cool. That was cool. That's some Rick and Morty type shit. That's cool.
Get Meg.
Let's go.
Where am I?
If you enjoyed that slice of time travel pie, then don't worry. There's more right on the way. The next episode we'll be looking at is Season 10's Back to the Pilot. And it begins with Brian finding an old tennis ball, which sparks a memory about another hidden ball in the garden that he buried 10 years ago.
Exact day, January 31st, 1999.
As we know, we don't have to ask Stewie twice to time travel, so he heads again to the past to help Brian find his ball. They travel back to 1999, back to the time of the first episode of the series. Hey, come on, I told you that scene would come in handy. After a little
I like it because then it shows that it shows like the old animation and shits too, but it shows like the new animation in the old animation. That's what's so cool to me. I like that.
The pair find the ball and head home, but when they get back to the present, things are majorly different.
I can't even express how mad I am at you right now.
Without 9/11, there was no wave of fear to help Bush secure a second term. As a result, he lost the 2004 election and, instead of invading Iraq, he created a second Confederacy, which sparked a second Civil War.
Also, just to pause it and just for some real life, like this is real life education. This is not yet. This is something I learned in college. I think there was one state. I want to say it was Florida. I forgot who he was running against at the time in 2001 around that time. But Florida was miscounted and they wanted to be recounted or something like that. And it was actually going to be like they were going to recount the votes and see, I think, to see if Bush won, I think. It was a big deal. I remember they were making a big deal out of it, but then 9/11 happened and they weren't able, they said fuck it. They said fuck recounting the votes for Florida. We need to take action. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, like, and I'm not like speaking on this, you know what I'm saying? Now this is going to be, this is the part. People, you know what I'm saying? So when people say Bush did 9/11, there is like, you could see like the political motivation behind it. Now I'm not saying he did it. I'm just saying, like, I understand, like, I see why people who are like that, who are conspiracy theorists, who are on that wave, why they think he did it. And I don't know if they explained it to me and there was more facts to back it up. Maybe I believe it. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but I'm not saying he did do it. I'd have to see like more evidence and stuff like that. I'm not just convinced, you know what I'm saying, off conspiracy videos. But that was the thing that like Florida was going to be like recounted, but people say, you know what I'm saying, the conspiracy theorists say that he, you know what I'm saying, that Bush did 9/11 to secure the presidency. I'm not, again, and this is any new knowledge or anything like that, but yeah, I'm just saying it. But back to video.
Determined to fix everything, they go back in time again to stop Brian from telling his past self about 9/11. This time, it seems to work. But Brian just can't help himself. They keep going back, trying to convince their former selves to not do the thing that changes the future. Only problem with that is that there's a lot of changes. The situation spirals into chaos, until the main Stewie snaps and yells at everybody to get back into their individual return pads and go back to their own time periods immediately. Once the alternate versions leave, the original Stewie takes drastic action. He stops their past selves right as they first arrive and forces them to return to their own time, shooting Brian in the leg just to make sure that he listens. With the timeline restored, they wait for themselves to vanish from existence, as if none of the time traveling ever happened. Back in the present, Brian and Stewie sit in confusion, trying to figure out what, if anything, just happened. But it seems that not all the creases in time have been ironed out properly.
Hey guys, I'm gonna need the couch. The gang and I are gonna watch the game.
In Forget-Me-Not, Peter, Brian, Joe, and Quagmire spend the night playing laser tag. Yeah, I should say that Cleveland has now left for Stool Bend. We don't actually see him go, but we see his journey in the first episode of The Cleveland Show. They then head to the Drunken Clam for a few bottles of suds, and on their way back, they spot some strange lights in the road.
Oh yeah, because Cleveland left, he got his own show, The Cleveland Show and shit. Okay.
They wake up in a hospital, disoriented and confused. Their memories are completely wiped, and the entire town is deserted. As they wander through Quahog, they struggle to remember who they are or what happened. Their only clue is Peter's car, where they find an address inside. Brian's nose tells them the house is nearby, so they follow the lead.
Well, this is 31 Spooner Street. I'm home. All right, see you guys.
With no memory of their real lives, they start jumping to wild conclusions. Brian assumes it belongs to Quagmire. Joe becomes convinced that he's a stripper, and they have no idea what to make of Peter, believing Peter caused the disaster. Joe and Quagmire decide that he has to die, because that's the most obvious thing to do, isn't it? Thank God for Brian being the voice of reason. He talks the guys down, and refuses to turn on Peter, jumping in front of the stray bullet fired at his best friend.
Damn.
But as he loses his life, Brian wakes up in Stewie's room. Yeah, turns out this was just another one of his evil schemes to see how far Brian would actually go to save Peter.
What the hell? What's going on? Stewie?
Well, Brian?
Turns out their bond is far stronger than he thought. There's more foul play afoot in the episode Internal Affairs. This time, Peter kind of deserves his beating. He backs into Ernie's car for crying out loud. That's small potatoes compared to them accidentally stepping on Stewie's time pad and fighting literally across time. When they crash back to this universe, it looks like Peter might have gotten the better of him. But this chicken isn't going down without a fight. This back-to-back Ernie episodes? Yeah, it's a little bit of a cheat though, as it's a fight played completely in reverse thanks to Stewie's broken time machine, but hey,
okay.
All chicken fights are good fights in my book. Season 12's Life of Brian isn't really an important episode as a whole, but it'll be forever remembered for this.
I'm sorry. He's gone.
And I guess also for the
it kind of was at the time, though, because at the time it was an important episode because everyone thought he was gone. So that kind of was an important episode at the time when it released. You know what I'm saying? When it released now, but now, like, you know what happens. I'm not going to spoil it, but like, at the time when it first released, it was probably the most, honestly, I'd say it was the most important, when it released, it probably was the most important episode of Family Guy ever, because it was it was taking a really liked character, you took out a really liked character, you took him out of the main cast, and then try to replace him with no, it wasn't the same,
the new family dog, Vinny.
And I'm glad they didn't stick with this, I'm glad they didn't stick with this, because it would have changed the show forever. I don't think it would have changed it good. I'm glad they stuck Brian back. Like, that's what I'm saying, they got gold. Like, bro, don't change anything about Family Guy. You guys got it. Like, it's been going for 20 plus years, bro. Don't change it.
Really? All right.
So is that it? Is our favorite canine companion gone forever? Nah. Stewie's got a time machine, and in the episode Christmas Guy, he realizes that he wants his old friend back. The episode begins with Stewie throwing the mother of all tantrums because a Christmas carnival has been canceled thanks to Carter. Peter confronts Carter, demanding to know why he'd ruined Christmas, especially for his own grandson. Carter casually admits that he hates Christmas. An old rich dude who hates Christmas? Where have I seen this before? Peter refuses to accept that answer and makes it his mission to restore Carter's Christmas spirit. Well, I guess kind of thanks to Peter, Carter brings the carnival back, but it doesn't do much to lift Stewie's spirits. When he finally gets a moment with Santa, he realizes the only thing he truly wants for Christmas is Brian.
Best friend! My dog, Brian. He's dead.
Vinny, meanwhile, does everything he can to cheer Stewie up, even pretending to be Brian. I mean, at least the guy's trying. Maybe he gets a bad rap. In a last
it's not. Yeah, stop. It's not the same, bro. Don't. No.
A former version of Stewie buying some toys just before Brian died. Using Vinny, he manages to manipulate the older Stewie and gets his time return pad out of his backpack. The plan goes smoothly, and as Stewie gets ready to leave, he takes a moment to say goodbye to Vinny, knowing that if this works, he'll have never met him in the first place.
Hey. I'm man's best friend, not some stupid baby's best friend, right?
So with that, Stewie heads back to save Brian. Back in the present, Brian is alive and well, completely unaware of what's happened, but incredibly grateful when Stewie explained things, and for once, the Griffins have a great Christmas together. I think it's fair to say.
Or if anything, if they are going to change, I was thinking, if they're going to change the show, why not add a character? Why not add another dog, or add like a girlfriend or boyfriend, you know what I'm saying? Add like Meg's boyfriend or Chris's girlfriend. Why would you take out a main cast of character? That made no sense. Like, bro, no, like add a character on. I understand I understand you want to change it because, you know what I'm saying, like, can't be the same for 20 plus years, but like, get smart. Or you could have added add a second dog, keep Brian, or I don't know, they got to think of something better than just taking Brian out. Like, that was stupid, you know what I'm saying? But then again, that could have been just a thing to get the ratings up and shit and everyone talking about it.
The Family Guy were hugely inspired by The Simpsons. I mean, so much so, The Simpsons made this joke.
Plagiarismo, yo!
Well, in season 13,
bro, there's Family Guy and American Dad in there, I'm deceased!
The Simpsons team up in a historic crossover episode. It starts with Peter getting annoyed by an unfunny comic strip that inspires him to make his own. At first, his art is a hit, but things take a turn when one of his strips offends women and the internet turns against him.
Sake.
There you go.
Desperate to clear his name, he appears on Joyce's show, but it only adds fuel to the fire, and leads to the Griffins being banished from Quahog. After driving all night, they stop at a gas station, but while they're trying to pay for their gas, their car gets stolen, leaving them stranded in a little place known as Springfield. As they wander through town, they take in the sights, trying to figure out their next move. Peter heads to the police station to report the theft. Rookie mistake asking Chief Wiggum for help. Hungry and out of money, they stop by the Quickie Mart, where Apu suggests they try a donut, and right on cue, the man, the myth, the legend strolls in.
How come this convenience store has so many shadowy parts?
He pays for their sweet treats and takes them back to Evergreen Terrace. The Simpsons take...
The future of your business is here. With Wix, you get advanced AI capabilities.
The Griffins in until things settle down. Bart introduces Stewie and Brian to his so-called weapons closet, which consists only of a slingshot. And Stewie tries his hand at pranking him up.
Do I got a leaky bum? Come on, look at the stools. Is there a leaky bum?
As the guys swap job stories, Peter impresses Homer with his brewery gig. And Homer promises to help him track down his stolen car. Bart, meanwhile, is showing Stewie the ropes of Springfield, getting him to go skateboarding, and introducing him to Nelson.
I say, how long has that boy been treating you like that?
Homer and Peter try to recover the car. but let's just say it isn't going very well. Meanwhile, Nelson wakes up to find himself Stewie's captive, forced to eat his shorts as punishment. I guess he took Bart's words at face value. The guys take a break from their search, but when forced to get back to work, they attempt to use a giant magnet to retrieve the car. Thanks to Hans Moleman, the pair end up finding Peter's car and they celebrate at Moe's, where Peter introduces Homer to Pawtucket Patriot Ale, only to discover a Duff beer label stuck over it and a fierce legal battle breaks out over which beer is real.
Intellectual theft! What do you have to say about that, Griffin? Go!
The judge, which for some reason is Fred Flintstone,
Cause that's Bart's line. That's stupid.
In favor of Duff, pointing out that both are ripoffs of his bead, Bud Rock. You know, considering this is a later episode of the show, they still do have some quality jokes now and then. Now the court ruling is done and dusted. Both Peter and Homer need to settle their differences. A handshake?
Damn, so they start fighting. That's right, they start fighting too, yeah.
Perhaps? No. Their fight continues until they both fall into the nuclear reactor where they gain superpowers and continue their fight, eventually crashing into Kang and Kodo's spaceship. As it plummets back to Earth, they lose their powers and land in Springfield Gorge. Their final punches nearly finish each other off, but it's not long before they realize that the world might not need Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin on the same show. But the world needs Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin.
Look, even if we don't work as best pals, I respect you.
You too.
Back in Quahog, the family finds that everything has blown over, from Peter's art outrage
2 classic shows, bruh,
all the way to the Patriot Ale problem. They chalk everything up to a learning experience, even if Stewie isn't 100% over Bart. In A Lot Going On Upstairs, Stewie dreams of his preschool where a terrifying monster suddenly appears. No matter where his dreams take him, the creature keeps showing up, making it impossible for him to focus.
Episode, bro.
The next morning, Stewie tells Brian about his nightmares and comes up with a brilliant plan. He's never gonna sleep again. Okay, not your best word, Stewie, but let's see how it goes. Well, it doesn't play out for long, because his tired eyes get the better of him and he's soon back battling against the monster. But this time, it drags him underwater.
Yeah, bro, I don't remember this episode. What?
Having seen how shaken Stewie actually is, Brian steps in to help, researching about this dream monster and coming to the conclusion that it must be ties to Stewie's subconscious. To help him confront it, he dresses Chris as Frankenstein's monster and arranges for Meg and the neighbors to swap places, hoping that Stewie might be afraid of one of them instead. He doesn't have much luck, and Stewie has to go back to the thing that usually gets him out of a jam, his brain. He constructs a dream interface so Brian can watch his dreams along with him.
That's cool as fuck.
They suddenly find themselves in a doctor's office, and every other dream they end up in is revealed to be controlled by Stewie's monster. Desperate for a way to stop it, Brian snatches a syringe from a horrifying version of Dr. Hartman and plunges it into the creature. As the monster dissolves, it reveals its true form.
What the hell?
Yeah, I bet you never saw that coming. So Stewie's true fear is that he doesn't want to let Brian down. Brian reassures him that they're best pals no matter what. When they wake up, Brian tries to explain what happened, but Stewie dismisses him, calling him a weirdo before going back to sleep in his parents' room.
Calling him a weirdo. He just called him a weirdo when it's like, bro, it's your dream. Like, what?
The flip, Brian sinks to a new low when he suddenly has the hots for Peter's new virtual assistant, Brandy. Now, I know virtual assistants are usually human in the real world, but, well, this one isn't. And yet, she's about to take Brian to the cleaners.
Yeah.
No, hold on. I didn't buy that. Peter bought that.
Now completely broke, Stewie steps up and offers to build a device that will swap their bodies, so he can straighten out Brian's life himself. Sounds good. I mean, I'd be a little bit insulted if a baby had a better grasp on life than I did, but whatever.
Okay, here we go. I'll see you on the other side of your eyes. Whoa.
Well, it was never going to go to plan, was it? As they prepare to switch back, Peter and Chris burst in mid-fight.
Okay, I remember this episode. They all like switched,
which causes a big body swap mix-up. Literally, becoming your father is a kid's worst nightmare, but when Lois tries to whisk Peter away for some sweet romance, Stewie's facing a bigger nightmare than in the last episode we covered. Luckily, Brian and Chris break him out of it and drag Peter along to find a way to reverse the mess. While trying to find a solution, they end up running into a piece of Stewie's past. As the crash settles, the fallen Transformer sends a sudden surge through Stewie's device, amplifying its effects and causing most of the town to swap bodies in the process. With the situation spiraling, Stewie fights to hold off Lois, while Brian scrambles to rewire the device under his guidance. Their last hope is to place it on a cell phone tower and wait for a lightning strike to reverse the damage. The plan mostly works, restoring everyone to their rightful bodies, well, except for one.
Word Dr. Johann said, did you?
No, I did not. I mean,
It's time to get a little bit meta now, as the episode You Can't Handle the Booth is actually a DVD commentary from the creators. We hear things like Peter's ex-wife is Sarah Paulson and that Philip Seymour Hoffman might be Chris's dad, which I guess actually makes perfect sense. It's not a super important episode, but it is one that's really interesting, so give it a watch in full if you can. In Drunk with Power, Peter's given a new role at the Pawtucket Brewery. He's in charge of giving guided tours to the public. Sadly, though, the results are rather mixed, with some guests enjoying his brand of humor while others do not. Still, his next assignment is far more high profile. He's tasked with escorting Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh around the brewery. Turns out to be a breeze for Peter, because if there's one thing that Brett loves, it's a beer. When Peter finally wakes up from their drinking session, he finds a note from Brett, stating that he's decided to quit the Supreme Court and has taken his own life. Okay, that's quite the twist. Wasn't really expecting that. Peter's then quickly escorted to the Supreme Court to become Brett's replacement. But he's given a huge responsibility from
where is this coming from? Like, what?
From the get-go, he has the choice whether or not to repeal same-sex marriage. Meanwhile, Brett, who is very much alive, attempts to form new friendships with Peter's friends, and it doesn't take long for him to fit in. Before he knows it, he's spending all his time with the guys. But when Brett has an emotional meltdown over the wet shirt contest results, he has a sudden realization. He doesn't have to choose between his love for rules and his love for beer. He can have both. Back at the Supreme Court, Peter manages to sway the judges into actually banning all marriage across the board. But before the final vote could be cast, Brett bursts in, demanding to reclaim his old life. With Brett reinstated, Peter is sent home, but not before delivering a final unexpected statement that manages to save same-sex marriage in the process. And that was the latest episode of the show, or at least at the time of writing. You can't deny that even though the comparisons to The Simpsons can be downplayed, Family Guy certainly treads its own path. The early seasons were jam-packed with...
Even from, like, that's what I'm saying, like, Rick and Morty, Family Guy, Simpsons, like, they're great shows of their own shows, though. Like, even if Family Guy did draw inspiration from The Simpsons and shit like that, like, they're still, like, it's still its own show, dude.
Tight jokes and character-led episodes, which had its own certain charm. Who knows if, like The Simpsons, Family Guy will make any sort of return to form, but what I do know is I enjoyed every second of that rundown. Hope you guys did too. Let me know down below what your favorite episode, gag, or cutaway from Family Guy is. For now, I'll see you next time. See ya.
No, so something I gotta say is, like, I don't know, this video should have been way longer, bro. Family Guy is 20... It has like 23 seasons, bro? He jumped from season 11 to 12 to like season, I don't know, he jumped around a bit. But I guess there are with that, it is it is a comedy show, so I guess like not every show is going to be important to the story type shit. But yeah, I don't know, 23 seasons, I feel like the video could have been a bit longer than an hour. But again, that is his job, is to like make it like, to kind of like brief it up, I guess. And this is like, you know what I'm saying, like hours, like for his videos long, like hour is kind of long-ish. You know, for what his YouTube channel does. But anyway, you know, yeah, man, check his channel out if you haven't. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, of course. But yeah, that's gonna do it, bro. Until next time, peace out.